The year is 2022, almost the present day. England's Test cricket team have just experienced one of its most barren runs within its history, winning just one out of the last 17 Test matches played. The playing group were at an all-time low in confidence. The COVID pandemic and the pressures around it had left one of England's greatest and the Test captain at the time, Joe Root, seeming totally burnt out. Chris Silverwood and Ashley Giles, England's head coach and managing director at the time, were fired, and Joe Root resigned from Test match captaincy. This left England cricket in a place where large-scale change was needed, and that's what came in the shape of Bazball. Key, McCullum and Stokes brought in a new age of Test cricket in England, an era defined by a fun and carefree attitude towards Test cricket and the pressures surrounding it. To understand this pivotal moment, first we must explore the history of international Test cricket and England's place within that. Cricket is synonymous with summer in England. A sport where even if you aren't a fan of it, in the summertime in England, if you pass by a park on a Saturday, there likely will be cricket being played. Alongside this truth, Test match cricket, the longest form of the game, is widely supported during the summertime in England. Test cricket is quintessentially English. The game has breaks for lunch and tea. Players wear white, which makes it akin to another British tradition of the summer in England, Wimbledon. It's almost laughably English, in a way straight out of a caricature of what someone might paint when referring to England in summertime. Cricket across the world is incredibly popular, but it doesn't take a historian to figure out where it is at its most popular. It is almost exclusively former colonies of the British Empire and members of the Commonwealth as it still exists today, especially as it spreads to corners of the world where the usual weather conditions were actually more suited to playing cricket, as places such as Australia, the Caribbean, India and South Africa. Cricket became a popular pastime. Cricket from the perspective of the British Empire was also something that exemplified British values, so therefore it was widely encouraged around this empire. The consequence of this, therefore, is that England cricket, in its more modern form, still represents this problematic empire for some. What this also meant, this spreading of cricket to far away, warmer parts of the empire, was that the unintended consequence was due to these countries being in far warmer climates, the cricketers around the world would be able to improve at this game at a rate of which those back in England could not keep up with due to the inclement weather of England. Now this might seem a ridiculous point, but cricket is well known for being a summer game. And until as recently as the 1960s, pitches were uncovered, meaning that they were truly at the liberty of Mother Nature. This focus on weather, although being stereotypically English for me, I assure you the irony is not lost on me, is for a reason. It meant that around the world cricketers were developing at a rate that England couldn't keep up with. This coupled with the after effects of said problematic empire, England was always the target of the world's cricket teams. As I mentioned earlier, almost a cricket team that represented this empire that had colonised and repressed these countries. So when international cricket began forming in the earliest 20th century, how connected it was to the British Empire was so explicit that the ICC, the International Cricket Council, were not interested in broadening the popularity of cricket and were reluctant to invite non-Commonwealth nations into the ICC. To begin, it was purely England, Australia and South Africa when the ICC was founded in 1909. This then expanded in 1926 as India, New Zealand and the West Indies, the Caribbean for non-cricket fans, became members, and Pakistan joined in 1952. So if we mark this date around 1952 as the moment where international cricket had truly taken off and began to look like international cricket world we know now, therefore from this point of history in 1952 we can start to assess England cricket's place within the world of Test cricket. A way to illustrate this is to use a metric that is created by Ananthan Narayana in an article for ESPN and Cricinfo, which charted the most dominant Test cricket teams of the entirety history of Test cricket. It used one index which creates a flowchart of 5-year performance to structure the most dominant team at the end of any year in Test cricket history. The index itself is very complicated, so I won't try and explain that part of the article. But what it does in essence is map out the most successful team in Test cricket every year since Test cricket was first played in 1877. Now, due to the fact that the first 50 or so years, the answer alternated between Australia and England, was much more on the Australian side, I hate to admit that the date that Pakistan joined the ICC in 1952 feels like a fairish indicator of modern-ish Test cricket. To begin at this date of 1952 and go until 2021, when the article was published, these are the amount of years which teams were ranked as the best in the world due to this index. Australia at 31, West Indies 20, England 11, India 5, South Africa 4. They were banned from 1970 to 1991 due to the sanctions placed upon them during the apartheid regime. Pakistan 2, and New Zealand 1. The clear takeaways are Australia's consistent dominance throughout Test cricket history, coupled with West Indies' dominance of the 1960 through to 1990 period. Another one, of course, South Africa's limited number due to the apartheid regime and the sanctions placed, and the surprise in some senses is that India's first appearance wasn't until 2016, but they did stay on for the 5 years following, perhaps a slightly ominous sign of things to come. But to focus on England's 11 years at the top, it's not a bad feat. Lots of great competition in that time. Of course, if I posed to you that 10 of those 11 instances were before 1981, it would paint a pretty bleak picture for English cricket, whose aim, one would hope, is to be at the top of the pile. This coupled with, in that time, the county championship, the English domestic league, being a home away from home for some of the greatest cricketers in the world. Players such as Viv Richards at Somerset, Wasim Akram at Lancashire, Shane Warne at Hampshire, and famously a young Sachin Tendulkar played for Yorkshire. But the list truly could go on and on. All of this happening in the era of the 1980s and onwards, where England had a few flashes in the pan of dominance, but they were rare, and usually there was a bigger fish within world cricket, whether it be the West Indies of Australia, or more recently, India and South Africa. So despite being the founders, England were not the best at this quintessentially English game. The feeling of English cricket underachieving has almost become perpetual, and the most famous and joyous moments of Test cricket fandom in England have often been against the great dominant Test teams of the time. This was perfectly represented in the 2005 Ashes, where that true feeling of underdog could be appreciated after nearly a decade plus of Aussie dominance. Now, of course, just because you founded a sport doesn't mean you necessarily need to be the best at it. England's football team shows this to be true, even more obviously, you could argue. But it is what an English sports fan wants or expects. Whether that is due to the hangover attitude from the British Empire, or more simply, every international sports fan wants their teams to win. Who knows? But it's certainly not an unfair thing for cricket fans in England to expect, to be competing and to be in and around the best team in world Test cricket. And England's Test match fandom, both in England and around the world, shows this care and interest for this sport and this format. Now, it is easy to speculate why this might be the case, so I shall do briefly. You could explain it by the nature of the weather. Now, this may seem tongue-in-cheek, but due to the weather and other factors, England rarely produces fast pitches, and especially not at lower levels. As Test cricket has become more professional and controlled, faster bowlers and faster pitches have become the usual. So in the main, England bowlers have been known for their swing and seam capabilities, rather than high speeds and reverse swing that other nations have had. And of course, there are exceptions that prove the rule. Fred Trueman, Stephen Finn, Steve Harmison, Freddie Flintoff, Mark Wood. But when compared to the countries they were facing in that time, the out-and-out quicks of other countries in this 70-year period were far more consistently produced. In the same breath, England, particularly in the post-covered pitches era, have rarely produced spinning wickets, meaning that English spin bowlers have favoured control and subtle variation, rather than the great mystery spinners or great turners of the cricket ball that have defined the modern spin bowling era. Again, there are exceptions of someone like Graham Swann in the modern era, is the most notable example of that. But again, when compared to the world's great spinners in that time period, it's less the quality of someone like Swann, but the amount of Swann-level players that England have produced. This combination of factors has often left English cricket exposed at the highest level, whether it be not being quick enough at bowling, or not being good enough against facing quick bowling.
What a ball! What a ball!
To be clear, this can paint a very depressing picture of England cricketers, but this is only when compared to the world's best in these things. It's not to say they haven't been effective and competent at these things, just not compared to the world's best. To prove this isn't me being totally hyperbolic, it's a well-trodden narrative that at this point, what makes a cricketer successful in English conditions is different to what it takes to excel at Test cricket around the world. England have not been able to do what other great Test playing teams since the 1980s have done, and that is win away from home consistently, especially given the financial backing of England cricket through this aforementioned fandom. Even England's cricket's greatest have had their challenges around the world with their effectiveness, whether that be James Anderson and Stuart Broad unceremonious dropping from a Test series in the West Indies following an Ashes failure down under, or Joe Root's struggles in Australia before this winter's Ashes. Even England's greatest have had their questions of them and their ability to excel abroad. Whereas places like Australia, South Africa, Pakistan and the West Indies, fast bowlers have become likely, if not certainties. It would be exhaustive to name all the best in this regard, but to take one from each country: Dennis Lillee, Dale Steyn, Shoaib Akhtar and Malcolm Marshall. Of course, to be a successful Test bowler, it doesn't necessarily matter about being just fast, or being able to spin the ball really hard. You must be accurate and skillful with these attributes, of course. This could be what has led England cricket in the past 45 years to consistently not be one of the most dominant Test sides in world cricket. Now, of course, that could be one theory of it. A temperate and wet climate and the truth of that compared to the nations that were playing cricket around the world, especially therefore the training and development of players that could be done in England. It could be you blame the system in which players are picked for England over the majority of that period, and the use of the county championship has proven dated and ineffective to produce cricketers befitting the international stage. This would be a very reductionist point, in my opinion, but it has large part become what has defined the past 4 years of England's Test selection. But if you analyse the teams that fit within the 11 England teams that have been the best in the world, there has always been a heavy dose of internationally born cricketers, and particularly South African developed players, due to the aforementioned apartheid regime and the legislation following it. Think players like Basil D'Oliveira, Tony Greig, Alan Lamb, Robin Smith and latterly Kevin Peterson. Not to say these individuals aren't English, but you could not claim them to be functions of the talent identification and development systems that produced international sportspeople from England. This following point therefore may be obvious, but over a long period of time there aren't as many examples of English cricketers who came through all of the systems of talent identification, development and production, and then went on to be outright successes at the Test international level, when compared to countries like Australia, South Africa, India, and more in relation to the 60s to the noughties in the Caribbean. The difference has meant that England have not been able to produce the quality and depth of professional cricketers that other nations have in that same 70-year period. The problem there could be the lack of diversity of pathways through English cricket's avenues to professional cricket, and the lack of place for late development. As cricket being such a skill-based game, how you perform in your early teens getting into a county system might not be representative of later career success, especially when compared to the other countries we mentioned. A perfect example is Australia, where the grade cricket system can be such an excellent place for cricketers to develop, and develop late. The talent identification at a young age within England and the history of English cricket, more broadly, often falls within the realms of private schools and the movers of powers within them. Not to say again there haven't been examples that didn't fall within this stereotype, but it would be unfair to make reference to the pathways within getting to county cricket in England without mentioning private schools. Now, of course, other countries mentioned have these factors, but in England, even the links from private school to county is very clear to this day. Bleakly, as an England fan, the space for a dominant and effective England team has been dwindling, as other nations have caught up and exceeded England in terms of production of Test match level players. Within this 70-year period I have taken, that difference has only become more obvious. This can be seen by the fact that England has only produced one team since 1981 that have been the world's best. Now, to address perhaps the elephant in the proverbial room, the one England team that made their way to the top of this metric was Andrew Strauss and Andy Flower's England team of the late noughties and the early 2010s, achieving top Test team status in 2011 according to Anantha Narayanan's algorithm. Now that one team in the early 2010s is the team I grew up watching and idealising, falling in love with Test cricket whilst watching them play, but they were an outlier in their brilliance. Cook, Strauss, Trott, Peterson, Bell, Collingwood, Broad, Anderson and Finn, or something similar. A truly great side that had everything you need to dominate world cricket, both home and away. But as much as it pains me that any rival fan would want it pointed out, is that 4 of those players in that team were born outside of England: Peterson, Trott, Pryor and Strauss. Now Pryor and Strauss both moved to England when they were very young, but that point still stands. In short, England have struggled to keep up with the talent identification and development of other Test playing nations in this time.
And he's given Duckett a bit of a send-off.
Following this team, the general trend for England Test cricket, as of course has been short-form success, has been downhill quite majorly. The epitome of this slow decline was where we began this video at 2022. The mess that was the end of the Joe Root, Chris Silverwood and Ashley Giles era. With one thing established: the way in which England Test cricket was going was not positive, and that the signs had been there for a long while. But where there is change, hope springs eternal, and a new era was about to be embarked upon. Rob Key became managing director, Brendan McCullum became head coach, and Ben Stokes became England's new captain. A bold and brave new era, the Bazball experience, had begun. The Bazball era was born. The first goal of this new era was an emphasis on making Test cricket entertaining and getting big crowds back in. This mindset switch was fully backed by Stokes in that moment. Whereas an England fan, it was hard not to fall into an arrogance of feeling as if Bazball had tapped into something that other sides could not deal with. How wrong we were. The replacing of Leach with a Bashir and a Robinson for a Carse. Effectively, for anyone who cared at the time, it was clear that success at the county level meant very little to this new establishment.